Hey everybody, it's Dan. On today's Orange and Brown Talk podcast, we are previewing the Bengals and the Browns game on Sunday. So here's what we've got coming up. Mary Kay, Ashley, they're going to join me for the opening. We're going to go through some storylines. We're going to make some season predictions. And then Hall of Famer Joe Thomas joins the podcast. We get about 10 minutes with Joe to talk all about his outlook for the Browns, what he thinks of Joe Flacco, the offensive line, Joel Bitonio, if he thinks this team maybe could be better than people think. Lance Risland joins us to go over his scouting report of the Bengals. He makes his pick, and then Mary Kay and Ashley rejoin me. We make our picks for Sunday's game. At the very end, you're going to catch our Football Insider subscribers. They make their predictions for the season, so make sure you go all the way through to hear what our Insider subscribers, Browns fans like you, think this team will do in the 2025 season. Okay, let's do this. Our Orange and Brown Talk preview of Browns Bengals on Sunday. Let's get to it. As we're recording this on Thursday evening, it's about 7:15. I guess the biggest story of the day, Mary Kay, is that Myles Garrett was not at practice today. He did not practice with a hip injury. We don't know the extent of this. We've been through this a million times with Myles. I can already envision us standing in that locker room and him standing shirtless at the podium and smiling and saying, "I'm going to play." So I don't think there's anything to really panic about right now, but anytime the best player on the defensive side of the ball going against a team that he has traditionally dominated misses practice for an injury, not just because of rest or something like that, it is at least notable.
It is notable, and it certainly made waves across the NFL today and across social media and down in Cincinnati. The fact that Myles Garrett sat out practice today with a hip injury. We had no idea what was going on. We were out there, he wasn't there, and we didn't get any word on him until after practice. So it was shrouded in a bit of mystery. But actually, Dan, you saw him walk into the building.
I did. When I left, I happened to be talking to someone, and I saw Myles walk into the building, and he looked okay. He didn't look like he was limping. He wasn't wearing anything. Like, this was actually before we had gotten word what the injury was. So nothing really stood out to me from however far away I was watching Myles walk into the building.
So yeah, he came in today and he reported that his hip was bothering him. And then he obviously then went somewhere. I don't know where he went. Maybe he had some kind of an examination on it. Maybe he got some kind of treatment. Not really sure about all of that, but this will definitely be a storyline heading into the game. Now, we do know Myles Garrett. He plays through injuries. He plays hurt. He's played with very, very painful feet. The last year, he had his feet were really, really bothering him. He had surgeries on his flat feet when he was in middle school, and this may have been related to that. And then after he flipped his Porsche in 2022, he played with a biceps injury and a shoulder injury. He only missed one game with that, and that's probably because everybody told him he wasn't allowed to play in that game. People kind of shut him down. We watched him not be able to raise his shoulder after a game in Denver a couple of years ago, and he played after that. So he plays hurt. And we know with him getting double teamed and triple teamed on pretty much every single play, that he's certainly not 100% after any game, and certainly not towards the end of a season. So I don't think people should get too alarmed about this. As you mentioned, Dan, when you saw him walk in, he wasn't limping. He didn't have on anything that suggested that he was not going to play in this game. So I think he will play. And I think it will just be part of the narrative of the week.
Yeah, and look, it's something we have to discuss because it isn't. Anytime you do show up on the injury report, you do have to at least, it's in play, I guess. We'll put it that way. It's in play that maybe something is up and who knows. But I'm with you. I feel like, again, like I said, we'll be standing in that locker room on Friday and Myles will just kind of smirk and say, yeah, I'm good, or yeah, I'm playing. But Ashley, he's the one guy on this defense. If we went through and drafted the players on this defense that they can ill afford to lose, I guess you can make a case for Denzel being the number one pick, but Myles is likely the number one pick if we actually did that draft, which we're not going to, but if we did that draft.
Yeah, I was going to say it's him and Denzel for sure. I mean, I think so much of the Browns' game plan against the Bengals is kind of revolving around how much pressure they're going to create. And if you don't have Myles Garrett, that certainly hinders your ability just beyond losing his sack ability. It just makes it easier for opposing offenses to stop everyone else. And, I wrote I just think overall with Myles, he tends to want to get up for these games, and it takes a lot to knock him out of these games. So we don't know. We'll see what he says tomorrow, assuming he still talks to us and everything. But yeah, I think it's unfortunate. And the other unfortunate thing today on the injury report, which Mary Kay and I were talking about in the room, Mason Graham pops up today with a shoulder injury. He was listed as full, but that is another one. It would be a huge, huge loss, I think, for this defense, given how quickly Mason Graham has come along in this scheme, even like Jim Schwartz kind of outlined to us on Thursday when he spoke.
Yeah, and obviously it's a good sign that Mason was still full. You'd be a little more concerned if it showed up as limited, did he leave practice, something like that. So at least he was full, something we'll keep an eye on when we get out there on Friday and watch practice, get that final injury report. But yeah, I noticed that too. You never love to see somebody get added to that injury report. But Mary Kay, there was good news today, and that is Mike Hall, the second round pick from a year ago, was back on the practice field for the first time since he got carted off in week 18 against the Ravens. And we don't know what his status is going to be for this game. Obviously, when the Browns took him off of PUP and they put him on the 53, it was an indication he would be back sooner rather than later. So they didn't believe he'd have to miss those 4 games. But to see, I honestly was surprised. We were out there taking attendance. I'm checking guys off and I see 51 and I had to do a double take. Is 51 really out there? It's the first time we've seen him practice. So we don't know his status for Sunday. I mean, if he's out there on a Thursday, there's a chance. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But that is an encouraging sign, if not this week, at least in the near future for the Browns.
Yes, I think it would be difficult for him to go out there and face the Bengals after only practicing a couple of days and on a limited basis. But this seems to me to be the next step to get him on the field. Will he be ready for next week for the Ravens? We'll have to see. I'm sure it's probably up to him and also up to the medical staff. But maybe by week 3, he is ready to get out there and contribute to some degree. So good for him and good for the Browns, because they have been waiting a long time to see Mason Graham and Mike Hall get in there together. Jim Schwartz talked today a lot about that interior pressure and how excited he is to have that, because you can rush from the edge, and that's one thing. But when you have nowhere to go because you're getting pressure up the middle and from the outside, then you're making for a very long afternoon for the quarterback and for the offensive line. And even Grant Delpit today, based on what he's seen in front of him, all the way back to OTAs, he also said that he thinks it's going to be a tough afternoon for the Bengals offensive line. And that is largely because of what's going on the interior of this Browns defensive line.
And that's where this all starts. If this defense is going to be good, if this team is going to be good this year, I feel like the thing we'll be talking about. And honestly, I feel like it's not getting a lot of attention right now. And part of that is probably because we're talking about young guys like Mason Graham and Mike Hall and guys that aren't real proven, right? There's nobody on that other edge that people know. It's Alex Wright, it's Isaiah McGuire, it's Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. It's very unknown outside of Cleveland past Myles Garrett. But based on what we've watched, Ashley, this defensive line, at least in camp and certainly in those joint practices against Philadelphia, they're gearing up to be a really good unit. And Jim Schwartz he stopped a little bit short, but he even praised them today, which was a little surprising because Jim Schwartz doesn't love to praise people. This is the part of the team that I feel best about. And if Mike Hall is in the mix, as long as he can stay on the field, it just makes it that much better on the interior.
Yeah, the Jim Schwartz praise today, I thought, for the line as a whole and for Mason Graham especially, was interesting to me, because he's one of those coaches that if you try to ask him about a player, typically his little quip is, well, what's our record? Well, they're playing like a 2-1 player. That is sort of his standard little joke that he likes to make, and he doesn't like to single people out. But, I thought it was interesting that he was kind of willing a little bit to go down that road in terms of this line, that he didn't want to crown them quite yet, but he thinks that this could be one of the strongest groups that he's had. And, I think the perception around this team nationally, like this summer, even going back to the spring, but really this summer in training camp has been so interesting to me to kind of watch. Like, look, I don't want people to think I'm saying this is a certain playoff team and like being overly positive about where they stand. I almost think, and I said this to Mary Kay the other day, like I think the Browns are just an easy team to kind of dump on. When you're doing, Mary Kay wrote about so many of these sites have them ranked at 31 in their power rankings, right? Vegas has them with a 4.5 win total. Like, I'm not convinced based on what we've seen that things are going to be that dire or like as dire as they were last year. And I think a big part of that is because of the D-line. Now, I certainly acknowledge how quickly that could all unravel, right? I mean, when you don't have a franchise quarterback, that is like the premier problem you could have. Any injuries on that D-line are going to impact them. God help the secondary if something happens to Denzel Ward, because they're already into their depth there in a way that is not ideal. But I think that D-line is going to surprise some people, and it's just not been what people want to talk about with the Browns. I think they're an easy team to jump on because of 3-14 last year, because of the quarterback situation, and because, like, I think a lot of people, when they've talked about the Browns this offseason, were paying attention to the quarterbacks and not much else. So I think that's why this D-line, no one's really adding it into the mix right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. And I'll say this, like I always try to be careful coming out of camp. This is the team we've been watching for the last month and a half, right? Like this is the team we have been laser focused on. And sometimes if something looks really good in camp or looks really good in the preseason, it's really easy to sort of lose focus with how it fits kind of in the rest of the league or how they might match up with this team or that team. But I mean, I know I've made that mistake before, but Mary Kay, I'm convinced that what we're seeing from this defensive line is real. And I think, we're going to make our game picks at the end, but I think a big reason that a lot of people are picking the Browns in this game starts with that defensive line and what it could do to Joe Burrow and maybe it grinding this Bengals offense to a halt.
Well, we've seen Myles playing with his hair on fire this preseason. I mean, he's looked amazing. I think he has a lot to prove coming off of the trade demand. I think he wants to get those fans that jumped off of his bandwagon back on his side again. He's talked so many times about wanting to win NFL Defensive Player of the Year. If you want to do that, you have to get out to a strong start. You really need to be getting pretty much almost a sack a game to ensure that you are going to get that award because sacks loom so large in it. So he's going to want to go out there and have a multiple sack game. He's going to want to outplay Trey Hendrickson, who has beaten him out in the sack total department in each of the past 2 seasons. Trey Hendrickson has 35 sacks in the past 2 years, and that's 4.5 more than anybody else in that time span. So he's going to want to be playing just like gangbusters. And then you've got Mason Graham, who I really think he understands the simple assignment that has been given to him, and that is see quarterback, get quarterback. So I think he's going to be able to get that push up the middle if he can play as aggressively as he needs to and not be thinking too much. And they don't want him thinking too much. So I think he should be okay in that regard. And then we've gotten just rave reviews about the improvement of both Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright. You've got Joe Tryon Shoyinka over there. You've got Malik Collins. You've got Shelby Harris, who's always willing to put those hands up and bat down a pass. So I do see it. I have been seeing it. And I think probably the best evidence of it so far are the practices against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, they weren't 100% healthy. They didn't have Landon Dickerson. They didn't have some of their guys 100% healthy in that game. But I still think that it was a dominant performance. And we have known for the last how many of your years that they've been practicing against the Eagles, if something looks like it to you in a practice against the Eagles, it holds up that way during the season, right? I mean, if your cornerbacks are getting beat, or if your quarterback doesn't look good, or if your defensive line looks great against these Eagles in these practices, you can kind of count on it looking that way when you get into a real game. And that's what we saw.
So let's do this. Obviously, I actually asked our texters, you're going to hear this at the end. Some of them sent in some audio with their season predictions for this team. we aren't really doing, I made a record prediction in my post. We aren't all doing like straight up record predictions. So it's kind of up to you guys what you want to say here. But what is your outlook for this team? Like, how are you feeling about this Cleveland Browns football team? Obviously, as Ashley mentioned, the over-under not very good. A lot of people have them very low on the power rankings. I saw a graphic today. The team most likely to have the number one pick. Most people picked the Saints, but there were two people, I think it was from Yahoo Sports, two people picked the Browns to have the number one pick. So outside of Cleveland, there are a lot of people who are very down on this football team. Inside of Cleveland, there are people who are certainly down on this football team. In my column, I said 6-11. I've kind of been at that range kind of throughout, going back to coming out of last season, and that 5-7 win range. It's hard for me to sit here and say this team's going to be so bad that they're going to have the number one overall pick or the number two overall pick. I just don't see that. And I don't even know that it's going to be like a bad 6-11 necessarily, which is easy to say before those losses start happening. But I guess that's my outlook on this team. Like, I think they're going to be an improved team. I think the rookie class is going to make us feel good about some things. I think the pass rush is going to make us feel good about these things. I just worry about the depth. I worry about the fact that you're relying on a 40-year-old quarterback, and then after that, a couple of rookies that we don't know are ready. Those are the things that give me pause, Mary Kay, with really wanting to jump on and zag here and say the Browns are going to win 9 or 10 games. But I think they're going to be improved from last year, which I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think I always thought that the Browns would really try to win on the strength of their defense this year and then run the ball to take some pressure off of their offense. And I don't know, off their passing game. And I just don't know if they are going to be able to run the ball the way they really want to without Quinshon. They really wanted to have that bruising workhorse bell cow back to replace Nick Chubb. That's Quinshon. He's not here yet. He's not playing in this game, at least not that we know of. And so I don't know how they're going to fare without that power running game the way that they want it to be. But I have been saying this over and over and over, and I still truly believe this. The Browns are going to go as their quarterbacks go. If Joe goes out there and doesn't turn the ball over and lights it up and gets the ball downfield to Jerry and David and Sed and Isaiah Bond, and they can run the ball, they've got a good offensive line, they've got a good defensive line, they've got talent on both sides of the ball. I think it's a team that can win up to like maybe 8 games with good quarterback play. But I don't know if they can pull that off. The schedule is very difficult. So in my mind, it comes down to really 2 things: good quarterback play and the turnover battle. You have to win the turnover battle this year. It's the great equalizer. So if they're not giving it away and they're starting to take it away, big emphasis there for them, and they're not losing that turnover battle every week, then they can win some games and stay relevant. I see maybe 7, 8 victories possibly if they can do some of those things. And they can keep things interesting down the stretch if they can get, again, clean QB play and a good turnover differential.
Yeah, and that was the other part of it too, the whole running situation without Quinshon Judkins. I mean, they were relying very heavily on him being that bell cow back. They were saying that the night they drafted him. So look, I think Jerome Ford is a nice player. I think he's a piece. I think you can do really good things with Jerome, but if he's your featured back for a long time, I don't think you're going to run the ball as effectively as you might have with Quinshon Judkins. So that's another area that just gives me pause. And again, it's the depth that worries me. I feel like my ceiling is maybe in that 6. When I said 6-11, I might have said 6-12 when I was talking about it earlier. Maybe I gave him an extra loss there. 6-11 would be the actual math. That felt like 6-7 felt like the top end for me. So that weirdly, that was like my optimistic pick. Ashley, wait, what are your thoughts on this football team as this thing kicks off?
I think like probably 6 wins is more like my mean. I think optimistic would be more in that 8 or even 9 win range for me. Like that's truly everything's going well. You've recaptured that Flacco magic. Maybe you turn to Dylan Gabriel and he's just as good or even better than you thought. Your defense stays healthy. The D-line dominates. And then I think maybe you're just getting above 500, like just given everything else with this team. I think it's fair to say if we're talking about the ceiling, like my basement would be worst case scenario. They're around that 3 win mark again, but I really just don't think that's going to happen. So for me, like 6 wins kind of sits right there in the middle. And I think that's probably more true to their reality. Like, I think the thing that I just haven't really been able to get over that we haven't brought up yet is that schedule. Those first 6 games on the schedule are bananas. And I wrote a story today about Dawand Jones. It was mostly centered about Dawand Jones versus Trey Hendrickson. But you look at the 5 teams after the Bengals, they have like 5 brutal pass rushers coming up that they're going to have to account for. So certainly your O-line needs to be healthy. I think Dawand Jones is going to have to do a good job. And I do think like there is potential with them for a lot to go wrong. It's just tough the way this schedule is laid out. And we talk about that week 5 London game where, look, I don't know how good Minnesota is going to be in terms of are they going to be as good as they were next year, but you're playing a team that's going to have already been in London for a week. And then you have to come home, Dan. You love to bring this stretch up because then the Browns come home and play Pittsburgh on the road after Pittsburgh's bye week. Like, it just is set up tough with those 3 AFC North teams, the 3, I would say, best NFC North teams as well in those first 6 games. So things are not set up for them to find success early. And I think if they were to go that best case scenario and somehow manage to finish with a winning record, you would have to pull off a lot of games you're not supposed to win in that first 6 game stretch. So I think realistically, this is a team that finishes probably more somewhere around where they did in like 2022 or so. That's just kind of the vibes I'm getting.
But I will say the thing that would make me make a leap would be if you can rush the passer, that's huge. If you can run the football, that's huge. Right? Like those 2 things together can make you be a better team than can overcome some talent deficiencies. And that's where the optimism lies. I do want to bring up one more positive here, Mary Kay, because this wouldn't be a preview pod if we didn't do a vibes check. And in between recording segments of this pod, I'm working on a post about Bubba Ventrone talking about the culture. And you'll hear me ask Joe Thomas about it. He was around the team a little bit, and he agrees with Bubba that the culture is better this year. And I think there's something to be said about a team right now that just feels good about itself. Because when you look at the Bengals, they got into a public spat with their first-round draft pick before they signed him, and got into a very public spat with Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson was showing up to in the spring in street clothes doing press conferences. Like, very public spat. A team like the Miami Dolphins, right? A lot of people are fading the Dolphins right now because the vibes feel weird. And that's not the end-all, be-all in the NFL necessarily. Like, it can all change once you start winning games. But I do think there's a benefit, especially early in the season, that this team just feels really good about who they are. And they feel really good about the quarterback that they have. And this defense feels really good about itself. Like, sometimes just having those vibes and not having gone through this huge summer of uncertainty like they did last year, I think that can do something for you early in the season.
Well, I think you're right, but it seems like they got some of their stuff out of the way earlier on in the offseason. They had a messy situation with Myles Garrett, right?
Well, I guess we should mention Quinshawn and that stuff, but yeah.
So they've had their issues. They have had their issues, but it's almost like they got through some of the worst part of those issues early on enough that they're over it, right? They have kind of overcome the adversity. They have figured out, okay, we're probably not going to have Quinshawn right away. We don't know when we're going to have Quinshawn, but we've kind of feel like we've solved the problem. We know how to handle this. We've got Jerome. We've got Dylan. Now we have Raheem Rocket Sanders. And then with Myles, they overcame the biggest story in the NFL during Super Bowl weekend when he went public with his very, very contentious trade demand. But now he's talking about taking the team to the Super Bowl and winning NFL Defensive Player of the Year. So they had some of that stuff that you see the Bengals going through, that you saw the Cowboys go through, that you see other teams enduring right now. But they just got some of it out of the way early. And they are in a little bit of feel-good mode now. Joe brings good vibes. I mean, he's like Santa Claus, right? I mean, he just has an aura of feel good about him. So fans are excited about him starting the season. And I do think that, once again, I do think there is more talent on this football team, and they're excited to see what they have. they're excited about this defense. I think the defense feels like it can be something. And who knows how it's actually going to turn out. But when you factor in those young guys, if they're as advertised, this defense can really make some noise this season, and that can carry you places. So I do think that there is some reason for optimism, and it's not just all pie in the sky. I think there is some substance to it. Once again, as we have pointed out, and Terry came up with the number, Terry Pluto figured this one out, that their first 6 opponents had a combined record of 71-31 last year. It's a tough start to the season. It's a very, very tough start to the season. And if things don't go well with Joe Flacco out of the gate, then you could see Dylan Gabriel in there by week 4. So I still think it comes down to quarterback vibes, but in general, there is a feel-good thing going on with this football team right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, Myles Garrett spent all of Super Bowl week saying mean things about this team, right? But that was done before the start of the league year even. Like, that was done that Sunday before the legal tampering period started. So they got that resolved. Obviously, there have been the off-field issues with Quinshon Judkins. You know, they bring in Isaiah Bond, which certainly some fans weren't thrilled with. But it's just when I talk to this, or when we hear from these guys, Ashley, and when we hear from these coaches, and it just feels like things feel better. And I look around the league, and to Mary Kay's point, like, Dallas is playing a game in 15 minutes as we're recording this, and they just traded like their best defensive player. Like, all of these teams are either dealing with things right now or just got through things, or it was chaotic and crazy. And I do think there might be something to the idea that the Browns have a little stability and can at least feel good about where they are.
Yeah, like, those are examples where it could be worse, or if this Myles Garrett stuff with his trade demand had gone on longer than it did. But in the grand scheme of things, this organization just does not, I don't think, bat an eye as a collective whenever these things pop up anymore. And I think, especially if it's happening in the off season, not during the season, because I do think last year during the season, and especially during the early part of the season when Deshaun was playing poorly, there was all this outside noise of, are you going to bench him? You should have brought Joe Flacco back, right? There were all these things happening that it did feel off. And we're not there yet with any of that, right? And I do think these guys remember the best version of Joe Flacco, these guys that were around for 2023 and how fun it was, and they were winning and they got to go to the playoffs. A lot of these guys for their very first time. So I think the vibes just are better. And I think players, talked about there being more of a sense of urgency. I do think we saw it. I think we're not going to really know the benefits of things like having live tackling to the ground periods in practice. You can never truly measure those things. But again, I think it's better than the alternative last year where they just came out week 1 and looked like they were just not at all ready to play a football game.
Okay. We are going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, Joe Thomas is going to join the show to share his thoughts on this upcoming season. Joe Flacco, Joel Bitonio, all of that stuff. Lance Risland is going to join. I texted Lance earlier today. I'm like, hey, Lance, no pressure. You got to follow Joe Thomas on the preview podcast. Lance Risland is going to join after that. He's going to run us through his scouting report on the Bengals and make his pick. And then we'll come back at the very end. We'll make our picks. And then if you're one of our texters, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page, I've got some audio from you making your season predictions. That's going to be at the very end of the podcast. So we'll take a break, and when we come back on the other side, Hall of Famer Joe Thomas. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Our preview edition continues with a very special guest, Hall of Fame left tackle and Browns legend Joe Thomas. Spent 11 seasons here, of course, with the team. And I want to let everyone know that the Crown Royal Rig will be kicking off the NFL season with Joe at Dog Pound Drive on Alfred Lerner Way this Sunday ahead of the Browns season opener. So make sure to stop by for a chance to hang out with Joe, enjoy Crown Royal cocktails, and even receive premium ticket upgrades to elevate your game day. Joe, thanks for taking a few minutes to talk to me. How's everything going?
I'm doing well, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so look, you've obviously been around this football team. You did the preseason games. I know you were working with the offensive line. You've had a chance to sort of be around everything. And we talked to Bubba Ventrone today, and he was talking about the culture of this team and how he thinks it really has kind of turned a corner. What impression did you get just being around this team this summer?
I agree with Bubba. I think this is a mature team. I think they've got a leader culture that's driven by their experienced players who happen to be at really important positions. You got, Myles on defense, Denzel, you got Greg Newsome, you got a great offensive line with tons of experience. Obviously, Joe Flacco's my age at quarterback. He's done it all, seen it all. Jerry Jeudy at receiver. I mean, you look just all the way across the board, they've got good experienced veterans with maturity that have really set a good, hardworking, focused culture in this team.
So you mentioned one of those names there, and Joe Flacco. Obviously, he's going to start the season as the number one guy. Obviously, it has been well documented your adventures in Cleveland with different quarterbacks. So, how much of a difference does it make for this football team that they have a known entity there, a guy who's won at the highest level, a guy who knows this offense and can just make things function on Sundays?
Well, I think at quarterback, when you have a young guy, you have the ability to make plays off script more often. You have a little bit more of the ability of surprising a defense because they're not quite sure what they're going to get from that guy. And a lot of times that quarterback can make plays where you don't really expect it when things break down. But you have to limit your playbook significantly. And specifically on game plan, you can't really do so much game plan specific things like specific runs that maybe you haven't shown or route concepts, play action passes. And really that's where Kevin Stefanski has been at his best, is coming up with a unique scheme, game plan that kind of takes advantage of the weakness of the defense that he's going against. And so I think Joe Flacco just fits really well with what Stefanski likes to do because they can have the full playbook and some, and they have an expectation of what they're going to get from their quarterback with little variance, which makes a huge difference as a play caller because you have confidence you can put stuff in and they're going to run it the right way and the way you envision, which enables you to kind of take advantage of the weaknesses, the holes in a defense.
So I do want to ask you about a couple the other young quarterbacks because obviously you got to see them up close as well. Dylan Gabriel, Shador Sanders. You did both of those preseason games that they played in all three, so you did all of those preseason games. What were your impressions of the young guys behind Joe?
I think they were really impressive. I think they showed you the reasons the Browns drafted them, and we're so excited about it, right? They both playmakers, guys that can elevate their game in big moments. They can highlight the weapons that they have on offense, and they've shown good growth. I think the challenge for any rookie is, can you continue to grow and learn as the team gives you more in the playbook? And I think you saw that from both the guys. So I think they feel really good about where those two young quarterbacks are right now.
So let's get into that offensive line. And obviously, you were in camp working a little bit with those guys for a stretch. And the guy that everyone's watching is the guy that's trying to fill your shoes, Dawand Jones. I'm assuming his feet might be a little bigger than yours. I'm not sure. He's a very large man. But what do you think? What did you see out of Dawand Jones getting to work with him a little bit this summer and just sort of watching him grow and kind of, I mean, what do you expect out of him? Can he handle that job?
I think he will handle that job. I think he's a guy that has shown a lot of maturity being around him this year, a lot of growth, just understanding who he is, what he does best, and forcing a defensive player to do things special to beat him. That was one of the emphases that I gave him when we had our chance to work together during training camp this year and the one-on-one sessions was like, here, this is who you are. This is what you do best. Now funnel the guy that you're going against to try to make you it at your best to force him beat you with something that he doesn't do very well at. And I just saw a really good maturity with him understanding the game within the game a little bit more on the process of how to get better every single day and be self-critical without being overly critical to ruin your confidence. Just understanding that every day you're going to have a list of things that you need to work on and trying to get better at all those things in a very systematic way without too much emotion attached to if you succeed or not. Because if you don't succeed, that's okay. But let's try to make the correction and get the technique down, strategy, whatever you're trying to work on with just a little different route the next day, a different path. And so just learning kind of that process of learning in every single day and relishing in the work of that. I really have seen all those things from Dawand. So I'm really excited to watch him this season. I think he's going to have a great year.
So, how much does it help him and just generally this offense that outside of Dawand, they've got a lot of known entities on that line? Conklin, Teller, Posick, Joel Bitonio, who you know very well, obviously. Having that stability and just having that group that has been together and played together for so long, how does that help an offense?
Well, I think it's really helpful because you're able to make adjustments on the fly. So many times in an NFL game, you've got your strategy, you got your game plan, you practice, you go out there, especially in week one, like, and all of a sudden, okay, they're running a defense we didn't see on film or we didn't expect. How do we adjust? How quickly can we adjust to what they're doing and then attack them? And having experience on the O-line is important to do that so that you don't have a long lag between identifying what they're doing and learning how to attack weakness.
So I got to ask you about Joel. He's in year 12 now, so he's going to beat you by 1 year. He's a guy that you obviously got to play with when he was very young. He's become kind of that elder statesman, and really not just in the offensive line room, but that entire locker room now. He's really the guy in there. When you look at Joel, and it's really hard, I think, for guards to accomplish this, but do you see a Hall of Fame caliber player in Joel?
Absolutely. I mean, he checks all the boxes that I look for in a Hall of Fame guard. I mean, Pro Bowls, All Pros, consistency, longevity, ability to be dominant in the pass game, using quick feet and great balance, great hands, being able to dominate in the run game consistently with bunches of different running backs and a lot of different schemes. And having that physicality on the edge when you have to pull around and block linebackers and safety. And I think that really there's nothing in his game that doesn't scream Hall of Famer to me. I think the only thing that potentially holds him back slightly is getting into the Hall of Fame as a guard is largely stacking up your Pro Bowls and All Pros and Super Bowls playoff appearances against the other guards that are in the Hall of Fame or eligible. And, being on a team over the years that hasn't made that Super Bowl run has kind of hurt some of the accolades that he's gotten. But I hope that voters in the end can maybe overlook a little bit of that and look more towards the player, the longevity, and actually the results that he's put together on film over the years.
All right, a couple more for you here, and just generally with this football team, there are not a lot of people on the outside, obviously giving them a chance right now. But what do you think?
Well, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. Actually, I think this is going to be a team that's a lot better than people expect. They're going to lean on their strengths, offensive line play, the defensive line. They've got a defense returning that was number one in the NFL a couple of years ago, and they got a lot of the same faces back over there. But having that veteran experience at quarterback, being able to still throw the ball, lean into what Kevin Stefanski wants to do the best, which is run the ball, test the edges, hit play action shots. I mean, those are the things that they're going to do most of the season, and they're also the strengths of their team. So I don't see any reason why they can't be competitive in every single game and then win a lot more than people think.
How good can that pass rush be?
Well, I don't think anybody's blocking Myles Garrett. So if you can't block one of their defensive linemen, you're going to have some problems.
So last question here, going back to what I mentioned off the top. What can Browns fans expect if they stop by this Royal Rig when it comes to Cleveland?
Well, they're going to expect to taste delicious Crown Royal served up by me. I'm going to have some Crown Royal swag. We're going to be giving away premium seat upgrades from the Royal Seat and just a Crown's fifth year as the official whiskey sponsor of the NFL, my third year with them. And just an opportunity to have a lot of fun, celebrate Browns football, celebrate with some Crown Royal, and kick off what should be a really fun season to be a Browns fan.
So it's going to be a beautiful day. Crown Royal getting served up by a first ballot Hall of Famer. I can't think of a better way for folks to pregame, Joe. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, and we are joined once again, as we were all last season on these preview pods, by Lance Risland, who I got in his head just a little, because I texted him today. I said, Lance, no pressure, but you're following Joe Thomas on this podcast. So I'll just say that again. Thanks to Joe Thomas for joining us. And now Lance Risland.
Yeah, that's an interesting introduction, to say the least. So I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I'll do my best. Obviously, Joe is, first of all, obviously we know, but he's great on these things. He's got such great detail on what he's trying to talk about. It's awesome. I love listening to him.
Yeah, love talking to Joe. It's always great to catch up to him. And Lance, it's always great to catch up with you. I text with you all the time, so it's like, yeah, I don't know. We're not catching up. We talk too much. All right. So let's get to this. As we did last year, every Thursday you're going to come on and you're going to preview the opponent, dig into the film, all of that stuff. Let's start with the offensive side of the ball. That's obviously the side everyone knows. It's the side with the stability. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Is this team, in your mind, do you think they're going to just sort of do what they've always done with this group, or do you expect any new wrinkles?
Well, at some point in time, I think Taylor's got to help on these defense ends, not just Myles Garrett, but he likes to get 5 out, right? So at some point in time, you mentioned Chase and Higgins, but there's also Yashivas, there's Gesicki. I think Chase Brown is a really good back. But I'll tell you what, one thing that they have not invested in is that offensive line. Now, they have some guys up there, but that's really where they've been struggling. But yes, I think obviously this is a team that this is one of the few quarterbacks you win because of, right? Or you lose because of. Everything is in his hands. Their run game is very, very simple. Obviously, it'll be a little bit more detailed, but watching it through the years with Taylor, and this is our 4th year of doing this, it's doubles, it's a little bit of inside zone, but the run game is just kind of window dressing, just so they're not dropping 8 or, bringing constant pressure. The run game, and I think Chase Brown runs it well, and I think he catches it well, but make no mistake, this is all about Joe Burrow and extended runs and short passes and vertical. He takes care of everything. It's about as quarterback driven of an offense. In a quarterback league, this is about as quarterback driven of an offense as you're going to see.
So I think one of the things Joe has certainly gotten better at is getting rid of the football and getting it out quickly. And obviously, when you're facing a defense like the Browns with that pass rush that we all think is going to be pretty good, and after Denzel Ward, some real questions in that secondary, I think the big concern is will the Bengals just kind of spread the Browns out and just get the ball out quickly, just get the ball in guys' hands? Is that how you would attack this Browns defense if you were advising Zach Taylor?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things I would do when you face these ferocious defenses that kind of, I don't want to say, in the NFL, they're all disciplined, but these defenses that have a little bit of freewheeling, right? These defensive line have a little bit of leeway in terms of getting off the ball and getting in their gap and things like that. So a couple of things I think they're going to do to the Browns. They're going to spread them out. They're going to try to find matchups inside. I think Newsom's going to be okay against Higgins, because Newsom for me is a guy who struggles with those sudden twitchy guys in the slot. I think he's going to battle hard against Higgins, and Higgins is a catch point guy, right? He's a big, long guy. I think, he'll make his plays, but I think Newsom will battle. Where I would, if I'm worried, if I'm the Browns, is the inside slot, Gesicki, when they put Brown in this, when they get Brown out of the backfield against backers, things like that, making those backers and safeties cover, because that's kind of what's hurt the Browns in the last couple of years. Now, as for the Browns, if they're going to get the ball out quick, they've adjusted to that, in my opinion, by going out and getting Mason Graham and Malik Collins, because there's nothing worse for a quarterback like Joe Burrow than A and B gap pressure. But one of the, I think, and Myles Garrett has something to do with them getting rid of the football so fast. But if Joe Burrow, when he makes Myles miss, he steps up. That's where I think the Browns are drastically improved, is that A and B gap pressure with Collins and Graham. They're going to create a lot of pressure inside because they're not going to get doubled ever. So that's where I see something new for Joe Burrow. I think on paper, this is as good, except for that second corner. You're right on that. But this is as good as the front seven that the Browns have had in years, in a long time, because of the depth they have.
It's interesting you said that, because Jim Schwartz today, who we know is not quick to give praise, he was asked, is this the best defensive front he's had in Cleveland? He didn't go so far as to say yes, but he kind of said yes without saying yes. He said, we'll see. You got to prove it, but they have a chance. And that sort of reinforces a lot of what we've been seeing all summer. Like this team, the strength of this team is very clearly that pass rush.
Well, and that's why, if you ask me, the ultimate key to this game is winning on first down, whether it's a short pass from Burrow. So I look for a lot of third down type of defense on first down from the Browns. Why? So if you're crowding the line of scrimmage, obviously for the run game, which a lot of teams like to do, but like you said, the Bengals like to throw this quick game. So I look for them to be in press coverage, even against Chase and Higgins. I look at them to crowd the line of scrimmage and try to create pressure up the middle so they can win first down. Because if they get the second and 10, third and 10, they have the advantage over the Bengals. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Their defensive line is much better than the Bengals line when Joe Burrow has to hold on to the ball because the receivers have to run deeper routes. Now, like you said, if they can run hitches and slants because it's 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6, there could be some trouble.
So how do you think they'll deal? I mean, this is something we've talked about over and over and over again, and you said it right off the top. Like this is one of those teams that has always seemed to refuse to bend to Myles Garrett and help with Myles Garrett the way other teams do. And for good reason, Myles Garrett has made a career out of chasing around Joe Burrow. You can just close your eyes and see him ripping around the edge and Joe hanging on for dear life. Now, the Bengals have won 4 of 5 against the Browns, so they've handled it okay. They haven't run the Browns out of the stadium at any point, so it's not like they've dominated this series. Do you expect that to change at all, or how is it that the Bengals even survive? I guess if with the way that they approach Myles Garrett, I mean, it's fascinating to me that they're the one team that just refuses to kind of adjust to him.
Well, it goes back when you and I first started working together. I remember a podcast you had right before I went on. The Browns defense is kind of made for this style of offense. And the reason why is because Taylor likes to get 5 out. So he doesn't do a lot with chipping. He doesn't do a lot with, there's a couple different ways to handle guys like Myles Garrett. Let me rephrase that. A couple different ways to kind of, minimize what he's going to do. You got to run at him with power run games, kick him out with guards, double team him with tackles and tight ends. So you got to do that. Then you got to do different stuff in the pass game, right? Chip him with the back, chip him with the tight end, do a whole bunch of lineup issues, run it, crack him with the receivers. They don't do any of that in Cincinnati. What they like to do is, because it's a Joe Burrow offense, they like to get 5 out. And I tell everybody the reason why is because Joe Burrow wants to see the complete picture. He wants to see the complete picture of the coverage and what he's seeing. And they have such confidence in him getting rid of the football. Now, the thing that the Browns can do that other teams can't do is they can pressure without bringing more than 4. So those underneath routes and stuff that Joe Burrow is so good at with, the hitch routes and the slant routes and all that kind of stuff, the Browns get underneath that because they're dropping 7. Not all the time, but the Browns can pressure with just 4. Now, I can't believe he doesn't help because you got Brown and you got Mims, 2 massive guys, but they don't bend very well. And that's another reason. So their tackles are good, but Myles is such a guy who can bend, and he's the only guy in the NFL that can beat these guys with power and speed. Then inside, they got a rookie guy, Fairchild, who's good. And then they're still fighting for the right guard spot, right? Karras is a good center, but that right guard spot was still up in the air yesterday, kind of going through and talking to some of the people I know in Cincinnati. So I just think the Bengals do what they do. They have such confidence in Joe Burrow that he can get the ball out quick, but the Browns can give them looks and personnel that no one else in the league can give them.
This is an unfair question to ask because I don't even know if the Browns can answer this question. Do you have any feel for what this defense is going to look like under Al Golden?
Well, yeah, you know what? It's funny. I went back and I try to always do your homework, right? And the way I do my homework is just try to see foundationally what does he do. So at Notre Dame, he's a big he's kind of the opposite of Jim Schwartz, right? So he's going to play base. He's going to bring 5 once in a while, but they're big on getting lined up correctly, being super fundamentally sound, making sure their gap integrity is really good, making sure they tackle well. So there's nothing that Al Golden does, at least at his time at Miami and at least at his time at Notre Dame, that tricks an offensive coordinator. What he does is he tries to, I won't say out-coach you, but he's just going to try to do things right all the time. So, yeah, you're going to get a 4-3. You're going to get a 4-2-5 where they're going to bring the nickel in. Then obviously losing Hilton and losing Pratt hurts that kind of defense. But, yeah, I think they're going to be in more 4-2-5 because that third linebacker is a rookie. But, yeah, you're going to see a basic 4 front. You're going to see a basic 2 shell. You're going to see 3 linebackers, or you're going to see 2 linebackers and a nickel. And it's not going to be anything tricky. They're going to bring 5 once in a while.
In a lot of ways, this feels like the early Patrick Mahomes era Chiefs, when it was just, you would look at that other side of the football and just say, can you please be the 15th best defense in the league or the 18th best defense in the league? If you can just do that, the other side of the ball, we can handle it. We can get you where you need to go. And obviously things have flipped a little bit for the Chiefs. Now they have a great defense. Their offense, they've spent some money over there. They can't have quite the weapons that they want to have. We're not talking about the Chiefs, though. The Bengals, can this defense be good enough to get them where they could potentially go if this offense is able to carry the load?
Well, my big thing has always been up front, right? Both sides of the ball. I've always said that I love the linemen. I go watch the linemen every day in practice. And right now, their defensive line, now they brought in Slayton from the Packers, and I thought that was a good pickup. He didn't play very well their defensive line did not play very well in the preseason. I watched every snap of all 3 games, and their defensive line got absolutely handled. And I think, obviously losing Pratt was huge. Obviously, BJ Hill is more of a pass rusher at this point. Obviously getting Trey Henderson back, but with the Browns, they're the opposite of Taylor. Kevin does an incredible job of chipping on those DNs. He'll give them a bunch of different looks, and they'll run at him with 13 personnel. So he does all the stuff that I think really slows down a pass rusher. But I don't think this defense right now where it's at can even as good as Joe Burrow is, right? Because right now, if I'm the Browns and I like the Browns this week, and because I'm keeping the ball, we're in our run game, so we're going to be physical. We're going to stick with it. We're gonna hold the ball, shorten the game, and then when Burrow gets in the game, he's going to. You're hoping he presses. You're hoping Taylor presses, and they throw the ball every snap, and then you pin your ears back. So I just don't. Right now, this defense is not very good. I'm always honest in terms of like guys who I think BJ Hill's a good player. I think Logan Wilson's a good player. Secondary wise, they do not cover very well. Geno Stone, who I liked, he's definitely gotten older. Let's just say that. It's a defense that really, really struggled in the preseason. Now, I'm with you, Dan. I think preseason's never a huge telling tale, but defensive line wise, if you're getting moved, you're getting moved, and they got moved in the preseason. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So Trey Hendrickson, before we get to your pick and all of that, what makes him such an effective pass rusher?
Well, there's 2 things. One is he's absolutely relentless, and he's got a full arsenal of moves. But the thing that he does really well, he's a great counter puncher. So there's some guys like Myles Garrett who just say, you know what, I'm going to beat you around the edge with bend and strength. And there's sometimes Myles doesn't even have a move. He just literally wins because he's Myles Garrett, and he's just that fast and that good. But what Trey Henderson does, he's great with his hands. But if you overset with him, he'll jump inside on you. He has, if you take away his long arm, he'll go to a rip. So his second move for me is so impressive, and he seems like it's automatic counterpunch, right? So when you go, he goes. It's not like he's thinking about it, and he's got a great motor. But he doesn't have what Myles Garrett does. They don't have a lot of now. Miles Murphy's okay, but I think Conklin will be okay. But they're going to help him. They're going to help on Trey Hendrickson, and that he's not great when he gets chipped. He's great one-on-one, but he can struggle when he gets chipped, and the Browns will chip him on every play. Kevin will go very few plays without chipping him or running at him or doing something to kind of get in his brain a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to make 2 predictions. We'll start with this one. What's your pick for this week's game?
Well, I'll be honest with you. As you heard me say before, I'm a big matchup guy, right? And this is a bad matchup for the Bengals. And I try to stick to what I see on film. I like the Browns 24-17, but I think it could be a game where the Browns control the line of scrimmage. So it might not look as pretty or dominant on the scoreboard, but it could be a game if they can block Hendrickson and they can keep it away from Burrow. This could be a game where they control the time of possession. And those guys, Burrow scores late, but I think the Browns control the line of scrimmage and win this game. I don't want to say absolutely not easy, but they're going to control. If they control the line of scrimmage, this will be a good win for them.
And then I got to ask you, because season opener, what's your outlook for this team as a whole?
Well, it's funny. I was just on, and kind of the over-under has been 5, right? So everybody's kind of been at 5. I've heard a lot of people on the radio, a lot of people, I listen to you guys all the time. Now, once again, this is the coach in me. I never lose a game. This is from my father. I never lose a game before I play it. And people have talked about Kevin Stefanski's job. And the only time that I think his job should be in jeopardy if he's not thinking about winning every single game, not developing people, not taking a look at people. But I don't like to lose games before I play it. And I think they're going to be much better than people think. I got them at 8, 9, 9, and 8. And I'll actually say 9 and 8. And the reason I say that is because when you're good in the trenches and they're going back to their run game, we know how the defensive line, once again, we got to see it, Dan. I know, I agree with that. But this is a football team that's really got some tough dudes inside. And when you're good inside, regardless of the level of football, you got a chance to be in every game. So I say 9-8, but I tell you what, they're going to be in a lot of games late because of that defensive line. And if they can run the ball like they think like they're going to try, I believe.
Okay, that is Lance Risland joining us here on our preview podcast. We are going to take a break. When we come back, Mary Kay and Ashley will rejoin me, and we will make our picks for Sunday's game against the Bengals. Lance, appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
All right, welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Thanks to Joe Thomas. Thanks to Lance Risland for joining us. And Mary Kay and Ashley are back. Mary Kay, another Hall of Famer. We got 2 Hall of Famers on this pod. How about that? Okay, picks time. This game, I don't want to go first. I don't want to go first this time. I just don't. Who's got their pick? Who's got their pick for this one?
I can
go ahead, Ashley.
I can volunteer because I actually wrote a newsletter for our football insiders that will be in your inboxes on Friday morning, where I explained my pick and why I made it and what I think it means. So I am going to pick the Browns in this game. I actually think that's kind of a popular pick going into this weekend. I do think, to be fair, I have never picked the Bengals to beat the Browns on this podcast. And in the last 5 games, that has bitten me. But I do just think the Browns are a tough matchup for the Bengals. And I do think I reserve the right to change my mind if we find out that Myles Garrett is not playing. I think that could alter all of our picks here. So that being said, I think the Browns are going to be able to create enough pressure to make things difficult. I mean, obviously, Denzel Ward playing well throughout this preseason. He's feeling good. So I like what this defense can do in terms of making Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense uncomfortable. And I just think the Browns, when they come out this year, they're not going to just lay an egg the way they did last year. I think the vibes, to go back to our vibe check conversation earlier, they just are different. I think Flacco is going to be able to recapture at least a little bit of that 2023 Flacco magic here at Huntington Bank Field. I think they're going to get some easy looks, some short looks early in this offense, even though, we're obviously assuming that nothing unexpected is happening and Quinshon Judkins is not going to be out here propelling their run game. I think the O-line is going to do well. So I feel like the Browns are going to win this one. I'm going to take them 21-14. And in terms of what I think it means for the season, nothing. I said in my newsletter, I brought up a couple of key exhibits from the Cleveland Browns, and I think you just don't want to put too much on this game one way or the other, but especially if they end up winning this game, because I said it could be akin to the Week 9 win in 2021, the 41-16 win that came after Odell forced his way out. It wasn't a rallying cry for the rest of the year. They went 3-5 over the rest of the way. Or how about the following year, where they beat the Bengals 32-13 on Halloween night? Then they went into their bye week, came out, and got beat up by the Dolphins the following week after. Obviously did not finish with a winning record that year. If you want to even look at last year, they didn't get wins against the Bengals, but they beat the Ravens when they weren't supposed to, when everyone was counting them out. They beat the Steelers in that snow game when everyone was counting them out. And of course, those were only 2 of their 3 wins. I think strange things happen in this division. Even if we look back and the Bengals do amazing this season and the Browns don't do so amazing, we're like, how did they win? It still wouldn't surprise me, because strange things happen in the AFC North that people aren't expecting. So I'm going with the Browns in this game. And to be quite honest, I don't know how many more times in these upcoming first 6 games I will pick them again feasibly. But this is a game where I can go into it feeling good about picking them given the matchup.
Okay, so there we go. We got a Browns pick. Mary Kay, do you want to go here?
Last. All right, Dan, I love it.
Oh, well, you know what? Actually, I'll let you go last, because I'll just real quickly say mine. And I'm going to say this before I know what you're picking. I hate that I'm doing this, because I don't actually believe it in myself. I feel like on the outside, people just don't understand what this Browns pass rush could be. And that's part of why outside of Cleveland, you're not seeing people kind of jumping on this bandwagon for this game specifically. But I hate when it feels like everyone in Cleveland is looking at this game and saying the Browns can win it. And it just makes me uncomfortable. And so for that reason alone, I'm picking the Bengals to win. And I feel gross about it because I don't believe it deep in my soul. But I'm picking the Bengals to win this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I'm going to pick the Bengals to win. Let's go weird here. Let's go 22-16. Bengals win on Sunday in week 1. Again, I wish I could give you a football reason other than maybe that ball just gets out of Burrow's hands quickly and they feast on the secondary. Maybe that's why it happens. Maybe Trey Hendrickson has a strip sack or something. Flacco throws like 3 interceptions, but I don't believe it. But I'm fading the public. That's what I'm doing. I'm fading the Cleveland public on this one. I'm picking the Bengals. All right. I feel disgusting. Mary Kay, it's your turn.
Well, Dan, I don't think you should feel disgusting about that pick because the Bengals are a good football team. They just happen to get off to traditionally very slow starts. They have started 0-2 in each of their last 3 seasons, but they are so determined to get that turned around. Their whole offseason has been geared to starting fast. So they are probably going to come out with their hair on fire, and the Browns are going to have to match that intensity. Every single thing that they've done in the offseason has been geared towards making sure they come out and win this game. And look, we're talking about Joe Burrow. We're talking about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Yashivash. I don't even know how to say that. And Mike Gesicki. I mean, this is a good football team. They've got Trey Hendrickson. He can wreck a game for you. So I don't think it's crazy at all to pick the Bengals. I really don't think so. And I do think that there is sort of a vibe circulating, and I've tried to block it out, in the media room where everybody's picking the Browns to win. And so I do get it. This is a game that can absolutely go either way. And we just don't know yet. We don't know who the 2025 Cleveland Browns are. I think we have a much better idea of who the Bengals are because we know who Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are. We know who they are. We know that he gets the ball out very, very quickly. And now he has such a mastery of the offense and what defenses are trying to do to him that he's just, the game has slowed down for him. So even though you are going to have Myles Garrett screaming off the edge and now Mason Graham trying to collapse that pocket and rushing from the interior and everything else that's going to be going on with this offensive line, I think that they didn't just fall off the turnip truck. They're going to be really gunning for that and really working hard to beat that. So it's really going to be the thing to watch in this game. And then as you mentioned, and as Jim Schwartz mentioned today, then it's going to be up to the guys in the back end. I mean, it's got to be a really, really good performance by the defensive backs. It just has to be, because somehow Joe's going to get that ball out of there and he's going to make his plays. And we don't know how it's going to happen. We don't know what the game plan is, but Joe is going to make some plays in this football game. So I think this one can go either way. I think it's a tough pick. I think it's a really, really tough pick. And again, the Bengals have won 4 out of the last 5. So it's not like they cannot solve Myles Garrett and they can't solve the Browns defense. They've done pretty well for themselves over the last several years. Now, having said all that, I am caught up in the hype of the Browns defensive line. I am caught up in what I think Myles Garrett and Mason Graham and everybody else on the defensive line can do. I am caught up a little bit in Denzel Ward wanting to win NFL MVP and these guys really wanting to reclaim their dominant defense and get back to that 2023 brand of Cleveland Browns defense. I am caught up a little bit in the fact that everybody thinks that the Browns are number 31 in their power rankings, and I feel like they are going to take that as a rallying cry heading into this game. And I think they're going to come out feeling disrespected. And I mean, 4.5 wins. I mean, that, people are remembering last year, but perhaps forgetting that so much of that was quarterback driven and interception driven. And if they get good quarterback play this year, that they should win more than 4.5 games. I'm betting the over on that. So we'll have to see. But I am caught up in the Browns defensive line is going to play with its hair on fire and make life difficult for Joe Flacco. I don't know if it's going to work out like that, but I am picking the Browns to win this game because of that mostly. Score-wise, I think it's going to be a little tricky. I'm going to say 24-23. I think it's going to be a close game. Dan, there's a very good chance that you're going to be the only one on the panel of the three of us here that is right after this game, because let's remember, this is Joe Burrow we're talking about. So don't feel bad about yourself, Dan. Look in the mirror, feel good about your pick, because you're probably going to be the only one of us that's right.
I guess it's just, I feel like I'm going against everything I believe here. Like, again, the matchups. Lance and I talked about the matchups, right? Like the matchups, the Browns always seem to do well, but I have my concerns about this football team, and I don't love that everybody in Cleveland is picking them. That worries me a little.
Just think, if you end up being right, you can do a little victory lap on the post-game pod if you want.
I'm not
Maybe
allowed
that would
to
make
do
you feel
victory
better.
laps. I'm not allowed to.
That one
I'm
time we did
anti-victory
ban
lap.
you. Yeah, we did ban you, though, that one time. Because what was that, the game that they ended up beating the 49ers? And you were like, I had a feeling they might do it. I said it, but I didn't pick them. And I'm like, no, you can't victory lap after that. It doesn't matter that you said something one time. It's not the official pick, no victory lap.
I wasn't even asking for like a... I wasn't even asking for a victory lap. I was just asking for like a little, can I jog 200 meters or something? Like, that's all I wanted to do.
That's half a lap. That's a long way.
I do think that it's probably going to come down to takeaways. Who wins the turnover battle in this game? Because if Trey Hendrickson is getting to Joe Flacco and strip sacking him, it's good night, Irene, right? And the same thing could happen with Myles versus Joe, but Myles and Joe, they've had this battle. They've done this dance many, many, many times. Joe knows what he's dealing with here. So it's going to be very interesting. Which of those two edge rushers is going to be able to get the ball out, to sack that quarterback and force those fumbles?
All right. Well, we are, how about that? A preview pod going over an hour long. Talk to us in December. We'll see how long these preview pods are when we get to December, but we're hitting the ground running here. Week 1, Browns against the Bengals on Sunday at Huntington Bank Field. We are going to have our post-game pod, as always, after that game. So make sure you get subscribed on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, on YouTube as well. Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com is our channel. You can actually click on the podcast tab there and see a bunch of our video pods that we've put up. So make sure you get subscribed over there. If you're not a Football Insider subscriber, you're about to hear a bunch of their voices. Cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved in that and become one of our texters. And of course, you can find us on Instagram, Orange and Brown Talk, and on X, we are Orange Brown Talk. My thanks again to Joe Thomas for joining us. Appreciate Lance Risland for his scouting reports every week. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.